the border with Pakistan are reported to have been hit hard. And then Kandahar, where there are air facilities and other weapons owned by the Taliban, and indeed many of the Taliban leaders have been headquartered in Kandahar, strikes outside Kandahar. We have not heard official confirmation of hits in Herat, airstrip there. David Martin mentioned earlier, no one knows whether they'd moved their aircraft off of Herat in the northwest corner up there. These other places she listed are places where they're known to have had some weaponry, the Taliban. Now, when you look at Jalalabad, down sort of the right off center of your picture, some weeks ago, supposedly, allegedly, and reportedly, according to the Taliban, that it was in this general area, a very mountainous area and an area near the Kunar Valley, where Osama bin Laden, according to the Taliban, was holed up or had been. Now, what anybody wants to put that in the way of credibility, but just note that Jalalabad is an area where bin Laden is supposedly, was there over the last 3 to 4 weeks. But of course, that kind of information, no one can vouch for how good it is. But on your map, at least mentally, you might want to mark one reason if bin Laden was in that area. It's an area in which, first of all, there are a lot of mountains around there and mountain caves there. But he also could get pretty easily from that Jalalabad area down into Pakistan. Remember that Osama bin Laden was headquartered for a long time in Peshawar, Pakistan, which is not too far from Jalalabad, across the mountain ranges, the Hindu Kush there. Hindu Kush leads into the Himalayas, which are more off to your right. It's a very mountainous region, and it would allow Osama bin Laden a lot of leeway going back and forth, if you will, between Afghanistan and Pakistan if he chose to do that, being able to plug in to other countries' intelligence. Here is Tony Blair speaking to the British people.
By President Bush, military action against targets inside Afghanistan has begun. I can confirm that UK forces are engaged in this action. I want to pay tribute, if I might, right at the outset, to Britain's armed forces. There is no greater strength for a British Prime Minister and the British nation at a time like this than to know that the forces we are calling upon are amongst the very best in the world. They and their families are, of course, carrying an immense burden at this moment and will be feeling deep anxiety, as will the British people. But we can take pride in their courage, their sense of duty, and the esteem with which they're held throughout the world. No country lightly commits forces to military action and the inevitable risks involved. But we made it clear, following the attacks upon the United States on September the 11th, that we would take part in action once it was clear who was responsible. There is no doubt in my mind, nor in the mind of anyone who has been through all the available evidence, including intelligence material, that these attacks were carried out by the Al-Qaeda network masterminded by Osama bin Laden. Equally, it is clear that his network is harbored and supported by the Taliban regime inside Afghanistan. It is now almost a month since the atrocity occurred. It is more than 2 weeks since an ultimatum was delivered to the Taliban to yield up the terrorists or face the consequences. It is clear beyond doubt that they will not do this. They were given the choice of siding with justice or siding with terror, and they chose to side with terror. There are 3 parts, all equally important to the operation in which we're engaged: military, diplomatic, and humanitarian. The military action we are taking will be targeted against places we know to be involved in the Al-Qaeda network of terror or against the military apparatus of the Taliban. This military plan has been put together mindful of our determination to do all we humanly can to avoid civilian casualties. I cannot disclose, obviously, how long this action will last, but we will act with reason and resolve. We have set the objectives to eradicate Osama bin Laden's network of terror and to take action against the Taliban regime that is sponsoring him. As to the precise British involvement, I can confirm that last Wednesday, the United States government made a specific request that a number of UK military assets be used in the operation which has now begun, and I gave authority for these assets to be deployed. They include the base at Diego Garcia, reconnaissance and other aircraft, and missile-firing submarines. The missile-firing submarines are in use tonight. The air assets will be available for use in the coming days. The United States are obviously providing the bulk of the force required and leading this operation. But this is an international effort. As well as the UK, France, Germany, Australia and Canada have also committed themselves to take part in it. On the diplomatic and political front, in the time I've been Prime Minister, I cannot recall a situation that has commanded so quickly such a powerful coalition of support, and not just from those countries directly involved in military action, but from many others in all parts of the world. That coalition has, I believe, strengthened, not weakened, in the 26 days since the atrocity occurred. And this is in no small measure due to the statesmanship of President Bush, to whom I pay tribute tonight. The world understands that whilst, of course, there are dangers in acting, the dangers of inaction are far, far greater. The threat of further such outrages, the threat to our economies, the threat to the stability of the world. On the humanitarian front, we are assembling a coalition of support for refugees in and outside Afghanistan, which is as vital as the military coalition. Even before September the 11th, 4 million Afghans were on the move. There are 2 million refugees in Pakistan and 1.5 million in Iran. We have to act for humanitarian reasons to alleviate the appalling suffering of the Afghan people and to deliver stability so that people from that region stay in that region. Britain, of course, is heavily involved in that humanitarian effort. So we are taking action, therefore, on all those three fronts: military, diplomatic, and humanitarian. I also want to say very directly to the British people why this matters so much directly to Britain. First, let us not forget that the attacks of September the 11th represented the worst terrorist outrage against British citizens in our history. The murder of British citizens, whether it happens overseas or not, is an attack upon Britain. But even if no British citizen had died, it would be right to act. This atrocity was an attack on us all, on people of all faiths and people of none. We know the Al-Qaeda network threatened Europe, including Britain, and indeed any nation throughout the world that does not share their fanatical views. So we have a direct interest in acting in our own self-defense to protect British lives. It was also an attack not just on lives but on livelihoods. We can see since the 11th of September how economic confidence has suffered, with all that means for British jobs and British industry. Our prosperity and standard of living, therefore, require us to deal with this terrorist threat. We act also because the Al-Qaeda network and the Taliban regime are funded in large part on the drugs trade. 90% of all the heroin sold on British streets originates from Afghanistan. Stopping that trade is again directly in our interests. I wish to say finally, as I've said many times before, that this is not a war with Islam. It angers me, as it angers the vast majority of Muslims, to hear bin Laden and his associates described as Islamic terrorists. They are terrorists, pure and simple. Islam is a peaceful and tolerant religion, and the acts of these people are wholly contrary to the teachings of the Quran. These are difficult and testing times, therefore, for all of us. People are bound to be concerned about what the terrorists may seek to do in response. I should say There is at present no specific credible threat to the UK that we know of, and that we have in place tried and tested contingency plans which are the best possible response to any further attempts at terror. This, of course, is a moment of the utmost gravity for the world. None of the leaders involved in this action want war. None of our nations want it. We are a peaceful people. But we know that sometimes, to safeguard peace, we have to fight. Britain has learnt that lesson many times before in our history. We only do it if the cause is just, but this cause is just. The murder of almost 7,000 innocent people in America was an attack on our freedom, our way of life, an attack on civilized values the world over. We waited so that those responsible could be yielded up by those shielding them. That offer was refused. We have now no choice. So we will act, and our determination in acting is total. We will not let up or rest until our objectives are met in full. Thank you.
The Prime Minister.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations and to attack the military capability of the Taliban regime.